live.
Let's pull this down a little bit.
Hello,
Center a little bit better.
Richard Milford here and Gary Plock here.
Hey, Gary.
Hey, how you doing, Richard?
All right.
What are we going to talk about tonight about tennis?
We're going to give my former tennis team mate a call, Ward Snyder, and see how he's doing.
Ward Snyder, he was a
Ward
great
Snyder.
player in the juniors. He grew up with Harold Solomon in the days of.
Hello.
I'm saying we're live here, Ward, and I was telling Richard I think that you grew up with Harold Solomon in D.C. area up there. Is that right?
That is correct. We grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, as a matter of fact.
So he doesn't want to talk about. We don't want to talk about Clemson stuff and Chuck Creasy and how he buried you and Richard, but.
Well, Rich actually, Dick blended in very well with Chuck.
Oh, yeah,
Dick,
of course.
You were probably recruited by Chuck, right?
I was, I was, as you mentioned in your book, I was one of his first recruits, with Gandolfo and Loader and Beekler and maybe one or two others. That first class of his first recruits, while you were a senior.
And that made a big difference. I think, I was just with Chuck. He was inducted, at Clemson, and we were just here. Citadel played Clemson the other night.
Oh, were
they?
Yeah.
They gave Chuck a nice award. And, we talked for a while, and we get along great now. But as you know, Dick, he didn't recruit me. He
Right.
came in and recruited all you guys.
Right.
And so it was tough for me because I wasn't as good as you young studs.
Yeah, that's right. You say that, but Ward, you were actually, top 4 in the country when you were 12 and you were 14, and you've written a book here, and Dick, the Tennis Life, and all these guys that we played tennis with, and this is kind of a ad hoc podcast, I would say. So it doesn't really matter what you say to me, Ward. I don't really care. But you've written two great books. You've written two great.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, you go ahead, Ward.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is knowing, the tennis world is a neat world, and I've known you, Gary. I've never played you because you would have kicked my butt, but you're always been a good guy. Dick Milford kicked my butt at Clemson. We get along great all these years later, and it's just a great world. This game.
What do you mean, Dick Milford kicked your butt at Clemson?
Yeah,
Dick was tough, man.
Huh?
Yeah, I swear, I beat every one of but no, I didn't beat Loader, but I beat all the recruits, including Gandolfo's. Dick, no, I beat Gandolfo 3 straight. Much better player than I was.
I think I read that in the book, but Dick Milford, the guy you couldn't get.
Dick was tough. But a funny story though. When I played Gandolfo, and Dick knows how good his serve was. It was insane.
Yeah.
And
So do I.
figured out. Yeah, what was crazy is I figured out how to play him. Don't ask me how, but I did.
Really?
And I took it early, came in on it, and I figured. And so, long story short, after I beat him in 3 straight, I walk off the court, and Creasy was right there.
Yeah.
Creasy was so devastated because he wanted his new recruit to kick my butt.
Wow.
I said, Coach, this guy doesn't have it.
That's funny.
Oh, was he pissed?
Oh, I
He
bet.
was.
I bet.
But that's the kind of, as Dick knows, that's the kind of stuff I would do. But Gandolfo was a better player. I mean, so was Dick.
So you chipped and charged on Gandolfo's second serve? You came in on his second serve, or what'd you do?
I'm here. Gotcha.
No,
He said, did you chip and charge on his second
Chip
serve?
and charge on Gandolfo's serve?
Well, as Gary, look, you played against guys like Kern and Denton, so you've played against heaters.
Hey! I'll tell you what. The 2 hardest serves I ever faced was Victor Amaya and Mike Gandolfo, and I played against Kern and Denton all the time. And it was at least as big. I'll put it that way.
Well, but Gandolfo was in the early stages, but I know Dick Gould at Stanford said that Gandolfo had the best serve in the country.
Well, the thing about it is he had that kicker. He had that kicker second serve.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That's what I had. And that's the difference.
That's very effective. Yeah. I moved in real early on it, and it's not easy when it's coming as fast as it was.
Yeah, but
you know,
you're an athletic. You're athletic. You're more athletic than Dick. I mean,
That's right.
you know, Dick was good, but you're more athletic.
I
You
don't
had
know.
the
I don't know about
athleticism.
that, but at least
I do
did
know
take
about
it
it.
early, and it worked. You know, don't ask. I mean, every now and then I beat people that were a lot better than I was, and I say, I don't know how I did it. I just, every now and then I got my head out of my butt, as you know. But, you know, we're all competitors, and if you go out there and try to win, sometimes you beat people that are better than you. But, you know, I'm not nearly as good as you guys. You guys were.
No, you were. You know, it's all relative and it's all time because you know there was a time and you grew up with Harold Solomon and his dad and your dad were great friends and stuff. But you know, you're very humble when you say that because you know I had my time, but then you know and Richard had his time, but you were good early, and that's what interests me. There's a lot of people that were really good early, and then didn't, for whatever reason, didn't carry it on. I mean, I was really good through college, and then I didn't carry it on, you know. But then you were really good early on, but you had so many different interests. You know, when I read your book Shark Life and look at the things you did with with the water and stuff like that. It's just really intriguing. And then, you know, Richard and I've been reading your book again, and Richard's got a question about Andy Johnston. You know, go ahead because he wanted to talk about that. And Richard, by the way, the book is called Tennis Life, and I believe it's available on Amazon.
Yeah,
it is on Amazon.
By Ward Snyder.
Yeah. And I've read through, you know, last year when I got this book, you know, when I was here last year with Gary, I saw your book sitting on the coffee table. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to get that. So I read it last year. I think I still have the last 4 people to read about, but I wish I'd known we were going to do this. I would have brought the book with me because I had it all marked up with questions. But I think I went through, you know, but there was one question I had where you said about Andy Johnson, you know, you're quoting Andy from the, you know, where the players talk about themselves. And this is Andy talking about himself. He says, even though I never made the top 6 players, I got to play some matches and my game improved while on the team. I also soaked in coach's knowledge. And after graduation, he offered me a job as assistant coach. I'm proud to say I helped him on the way to producing his first national championship team. When did we produce a national championship team?
Oh, you know, I might have. We never won the nationals.
I don't remember that. I think I would have remembered that.
I screwed up on it, Dick. I hope you don't sue me for that. I don't know how that. Well, you know what, Andy? I know that Andy told me because I was just with him the other day. He actually coached. I was with Brandon Walters. I don't know if you know Brandon.
Yeah, sure.
But Brandon and Richard Matichevsky won the only national title ever at a tennis title at Clemson, where they won the national indoors.
Okay. Wow.
And Andy literally was there. I don't know why Creasy left, but Andy coached those guys into the win. I don't know who they beat, but that's pretty impressive. That's
probably what you're referring to. But I also think Andy was the assistant coach when we won the ACC right after you graduated. You know, a couple of years after you graduated.
Could be. And Dick, you know, I mean, Andy really learned a lot and became not only a great coach, but you know, he's an incredible tennis player now.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about it in our age groups. Andy is unbelievable because he still plays, and he's amazing how good he is now.
Yeah.
You would believe it.
Yeah.
You would not believe it, you know?
Yeah,
his son is off. Gary, by the way, his son is, you know, look, you know, from playing, you guys played, and I never did very well. But this kid, his son, got to the semis in his first year of the 16s. In the semis.
Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's amazing. When I saw Andy at the reunion, he said Noah was one of the best junior players in the world right now.
He's ranked in the world. I don't know what he's ranked, but you know, He's playing in Costa Rica right now. He's playing some they're almost semi-pro tournaments.
Yeah.
And he's the number one guy in the country. I think he almost beat. So he's that good. But
Yeah.
Andy knows the game. He learned it from Chuck.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
he did. He really leveraged what he learned from Chuck with the women's team as well. And he must have meant in this quote that we helped him produce his first ACC championship, because I think Andy was our assistant coach the year I was a senior, because Andy had gone on to teach, as you mentioned, he coached at Furman, the women, and then came back and coached. Well, maybe I'm getting my chronology wrong.
The women.
Yeah.
He won the ACC like 5 years in a row or something.
Yeah.
He was inducted in the Hall of Fame at Clemson. And
Right.
do you know that here's
Where was he from originally, Ward?
I think he was it Charleston area, maybe?
Somerville, South Carolina.
Oh,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear a stat he did? This is amazing. With the women's team one year, they won the ACC, and they won every position they won.
Right. Wow.
Can you imagine that,
Wow.
Dick?
That's
Can you
amazing.
imagine?
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, he recruited Gigi Fernandez.
Yeah.
And Gigi had a two-handed backhand. Andy taught her a one-hand backhand, and
Oh.
within 6 months, she had one of the best one-handers he's ever seen. And she went on to, I think she's in the Hall of Fame now. In Newport, she won a bunch of majors.
Yeah.
Majors. Incredible. Andy taught her that.
Wow. I didn't know about that.
So Andy was in my book. Gary Plock should have been in my book. Dick, if you were a little better, you would have been in the book.
No, you
You're
mentioned
still
me.
damn good.
You mentioned
Nothing
me.
against you, Dick.
You mentioned me in the book. In fact, you talked about me at the very end, and then you mentioned me about Chuck when you were interviewing Chuck. Chuck mentioned me in his his personal experience section, at the very beginning of each chapter. But yeah, my name is mentioned there.
That's good. Well, you deserve it, Dick. You're a good guy and one hell of a tennis player. I remember your strokes exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you a question. What do you remember about Harold Solomon when he was a little boy?
I'll tell you a good story, Gary. It's a good question. Well, Harold was so competitive. We went to high school together down in Fort Lauderdale, and I played him in the finals of the district championships when he was a senior in Maryland, and I was a freshman. And here's a good story. So we're driving together in Harold's car to the finals of the districts, and I'm up 4-3 in the first set, serving a volley, and I'm sure it kind of freaked him out. Long story short, of course, he woke up and he beat me 4-love. So that's the only time I ever played him in a match. But this is typical. This is the Solomons. So I'm you remember Chattanooga, 7th seed. Can you imagine the next morning, I'm the only seed to lose in Chattanooga. And there I am with my father. I expected to do well. And I played Brad Neighbors, and he figured out my backhand was not so good. And he picked on it, and I got a little tight. Long story short, this is Solomon. This is Harold and his father. So his father says to my father, he said, "Leonard, do you mind if I spend a little time with Ward on the backhand?" My father said, "Sure." So this is Lenny Solomon. This is why one of the reasons Harold was so great. Lenny Solomon gets me on the court, and as you know, there's feet in consolation, so there's a lot on the line still.
Yeah.
And he says to you, "You're not leaving the court until you hit 100 backhands in a row."
Wow.
I kid you not.
Wow.
So it took a while. Hit 100 in a row. I went on to beat some Davis Henley. I ended up beating John Garrity in the final. And
Wow.
so I got salvaged my year.
Wow.
And then I got to the finals of the doubles with Scott Smith, who recently passed away, which stinks.
Davis Henley was a great win. That guy from Houston, he was a good player. And I was at Scott's visitation because I was actually a pro with Scott and a couple other fellas, Fritz Now, who later became Andre Agassi's coach, who went down to Terry's in Lexington, Kentucky. And Scott Smith had a big forehand, and he lost in Kalamazoo and won like 9 matches in a row. Beat me, beat Peter Fleming, and won the whole back draw in 18s that year. So it's fun to hear those names because Scott Smith was a great player.
But Gary, it was amazing. At the age of 12, I didn't even know Scott, and we got paired in Chattanooga to play doubles from Mike Borling's dad, who was up there.
Yeah.
Long story short, all of a sudden we beat Billy Martin of all things.
That's right. I read that. You beat Billy Martin and Trey Walkie. Was he?
I saw that.
No, Billy was playing with Bill Tompkins.
Bill Tompkins, yeah. Who kicked my butt.
We beat them. We beat Matty Astic and Henley.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. And then in the final, the mistake we made is it started raining. So we, instead of waiting to play outside, we had to play Bornstedt and Scherbeck from California.
Yeah.
And so what they did is we played indoors on the fast hard courts, and it was hard to see. And Scott, who was amazing. I mean, Scott Smith at 12 had probably the best volley in the country. His volley was incredible. So he could not see the ball very well, and they beat us. That was a shame. But what a player Scott was. And the regret, I remember, Gary, you told me he was sick, and it's a shame I didn't get to see him. I never talked to him since we played when we were 12 years old. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Well, I tell you what, the other thing is he had a huge forehand.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had it back then, but yeah, he had great feel on his volley.
So Gary, one last thing on so you at least matured and got good in college, and I didn't. But I played in the finals, won the Western Championships at age 14.
Wow.
I had to play Schoenfeld, who was Howard
Oh my
Schoenfeld.
gosh. Yeah.
Too. And of course, he's a California player, so I was on clay. I beat him. And long story short, I had played Billy Martin in the finals. And I kid you not, I'm serving and volleying on clay at 14 against Billy Martin.
Wow.
And he beat me 6-4, 10-8.
That's a great result. Billy Martin at that time.
Billy remembers it. I was up 5-4, 6-5, 7-6, and 8-7.
Wow.
I couldn't close. And I don't think he lost a match, seriously, from that year all the way through juniors.
Yeah,
right?
I don't remember Billy Martin ever losing a match.
No, hardly ever. When you watch this video, Ward, in the next year or whenever you do, you're going to see me and Richard, and you're going to see this guy in American lawn tennis on the wall behind us, and you're not going to know who it is, but it's Bobby Riggs in 1950 when he bet to win the men's singles, men's doubles, and mixed doubles in Wimbledon at a 50-1 and won a bunch of money. Although Bob Lutz told me years later that Bobby Riggs welched on a bet and owes him $700 from a match they played. And, Riggs was long dead, and he said, I don't think I'm ever going to get it.
I heard Lutz is a really good guy. I remember volley he had.
Sounds like it. Seems like it. So what are you doing? You're down there with Scott Irwin and teaching some tennis and pickleball and doing some videos down there in Kiowa Key?
We're doing all that stuff. I actually have a YouTube channel, and I've been doing a lot of videos, and I'm going to spice it up with some. We're going to do some shark. We're going to tag some bull sharks this winter. I got a buddy of mine who's crazier than I could ever be. This guy's insane, but he literally was on Shark Week. He knows, he does this stuff.
Wow.
And we're going to do. I got a shark suit I bought from Australia that'll help me to protect me. And we're going to be tagging bull sharks this winter, and it's going to be on my YouTube channel.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Well, that's really interesting. And Ward's got another book called Shark Life. I've got Tennis Life, the cover of it up on the video right now. And Ward Snyder, Tennis Life. And then the other book is called Shark Life, right? Ward?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, this guy's incredible. He goes and wrestles sharks, and he goes
I'm not that dumb.
He's well, no. I mean, if you're dumb enough to play tennis for Chuck Creasy, and I say that lovingly, I love Chuck Creasy was at the eulogy of Coach Snyder, in
really?
Austin. Yes, and I spoke at it, and
That's nice.
we had talked beforehand, and I didn't get his thing in there, but Chuck Creasy was very important to Dave Snyder, and so it was a really cool thing that he was there. He happened to be speaking at a coaches conference the next day in Austin, Texas. But
I have such admiration for Chuck Creasy. What he's done is just incredible, and I mean, he's just a first class guy. He was a little rough around the edges, but I'll tell you
well,
what.
to you. But some people might say you were rough around the edges, but because Ward, let me tell you something. Ward. I mean, if I'd gone to Clemson, I would have gone crazy and died because I couldn't deal with Chuck Creasy and everything that he would do. So I feel where you were, but this guy was like one of the greatest coaches in college tennis when you come around to
it's funny, Gary. I think it would have been interesting if you were there because I know you were a bit of a renegade too. But like the first.
Who says I was a renegade? Who said?
Nick, you weren't there. But listen, you weren't there the first meeting when Creasy shows up and he gives us a dissertation on. He just earned his PhD on interval training, right? That was his big thing.
Oh
yeah.
And he's telling us this running these long, distance runs is a waste of time, right?
Yeah.
So after all, and it made sense. You exert to the max and do the wind sprints, blah, blah, blah. So then at the end of this hour introduction, he says, tomorrow we're running a 6-mile run.
Yeah.
What? You're kidding.
And I went nuts in front of everybody, which was wrong. And Creasy immediately said, I want to see you in my office. That was the first time I met him.
That's funny right there.
And I was a wise ass, but I said, Coach, you're telling me all this stuff. I understand. Now we're going to run 6 miles, which I hated to do. And he said it's for discipline. That's what he said. So that was my first meeting with him. It was not a great meeting.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Didn't go over well.
Well, you and Richard, you and Richard, you cut from a different swath.
He lowered his standards when we came in. I don't remember having to run a 6-mile per time thing when we came in.
You owe me one. We broke him in for you.
That's right. You definitely broke him in. I think, probably now he's just having the players go out and jump rope for 10 minutes.
I know Fernando Mainetto didn't like his training schedule. I'll tell you that. I remember talking to him. He's down here in Naples. He's a big old tennis pro, retired down here. But boy, I mean, him and Chuck, they didn't. Well, it's not that, but they didn't have the same thing. Except, you got a South American, you got an Indianapolis guy that played basketball with Jim Price, who was a Final Four at Louisville, and he wasn't even. I met Chuck Creasy up in Junior Davis Cup camp in Port Washington, New York. And Anthony Palafox, Antonio Palafox, and those guys that were there, and so anyway, it was kind of interesting because he was, Chuck was just a young guy, and then he went to Tennessee Tech before he went to Clemson, and he recruited me there, and I remember that. But Ward Snyder was, he was one of the heroes when I was growing up because,
absolutely,
he's one of the top guys in the country, and him. I tell you, Louisville, you'd have Ward Snyder and Fred McNair and John McNair and Bruce McNair and Ken Daniel and Harold Solomon and coming in there, and I remember it all, Ward. And you were at the top back then, and I tell you what, that was a fun time. But it's interesting. I remember being watching the finals of the 14 and unders where Harold Solomon beat Gary Grohman, and Harold
Randall Thomas, right?
No, it was Gary Grollman in the finals of Louisville, and
in Louisville.
yeah,
Yes,
and
I
that's
remember that.
yeah, and I watched with Harold's dad, that who you said is Lenny Solomon, I guess,
Yes,
and he bought me a hot dog because he was so nervous. He wanted a little kid to be around with him, and watched the whole match. And Gary Grollman, had come out with that T2000 racket right when it first came out, and Harold had those. I don't. You remember this, Ward? I mean, no, it's before that. It was the Spaldings. It was that the Pancho Gonzalez. Yeah, it was the Pancho Gonzalez. So and anyway, so that was a special time for me. But it's funny how that goes, because you rubbed shoulders with one of the greatest players in the world, and I'm going to be with him in about 10 days doing a charity that Dick Stockton's wife does up in Wellington, Florida. A dog thing, and Harold comes up for it. But Harold's probably one of the nicest guys in the tennis world, I would say.
Yeah, he is. And what's amazing with Harold is, he and Eddie invented, the bagel twins. But and they did the moon balls.
Yeah.
But I remember, Dick, when I was at Clemson, I played Harold when he was top 5 in the world. I go to his house in Lauderdale on our winter, Christmas break.
Yeah.
And I'm playing Harold on his own court, clay court, and he's top 5 in the world. And I had a pretty good serve then. I was pretty fast. We were all fast.
Yeah, you're a good player.
Yeah.
Good player.
I'm telling you, I hit my big as hard as I could hit it, and he hit it early, and it would be on my feet before I barely even followed through. It was incredible how good his return was.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He's 5'6", as you know, Gary. You said he's 5'6".
I know.
He's not a big guy. I met Harold Solomon when I was 16. I don't know if you recall, but in Memphis, we hosted the U.S. Indoor.
Yeah, the U.S. Indoor.
And Tommy Buford, who was my teacher, he was the tournament director. And so the very first U.S. Indoor was held in Memphis, and I was 16, and I watched Harold Solomon win that tournament. He beat, I think he beat Cliff Ritchie in the semis, and then he beat Jerry Hrebeck in the finals.
He won the whole tournament?
He won the whole tournament.
Really?
And I played Mike Cahill because I knew Tommy.
Wow.
And I played Mike Cahill in a qualifying round. Of course, I was 16 and Cahill was at Alabama. And he served me off the court. But I had played a guy named I had played doubles and singles against a guy named Deck Potts, who was from the Maryland area, and had beaten him, and Deck played with Mark Solomon, Harold's brother.
Sure.
And we played Tiger Buford, me and
I didn't know Harold had a brother.
Me and
Harold had a brother?
Yeah, Mark.
I knew Shelley. But
so one year, I think I played Deck Potts in Memphis and beat him in a tournament in Memphis, and then Deck Potts played with Mark and against me and Tiger Buford, who played at North Carolina, and we beat him. And that was before this happened. This tournament happened in Memphis. And I went up to Harold after I think he was warming up at the racket club or somewhere, and I said, "Harold, you don't know me. I'm Dick Milford, but I played your brother Mark, who played doubles with Deck at a tournament." And so we started chatting a little bit, and he was super.
Was that the Wimbledon Racket Club?
I think it was at
the Racket Club.
The Racket Club, I think, was just under development, and he was practicing out there because the actual tournament was at the Mid-South Coliseum, which was where Memphis State played basketball. While the Racket Club of Memphis ultimately became the home for the U.S. Indoor, but he was there practicing, and that's where I was starting to play indoor tennis for the first time. And he was over there practicing, and I said, I saw you, I thought I'd come up and introduce myself. And he was just super nice guy. Of course, I was 16 at the time. He wouldn't remember that today.
No, he's one of the best competitors I've ever been associated with.
But the way he could spin that, take that backhand and just spin it, he would. He had Cliff Ritchie running side to side, and God bless him, Cliff Ritchie played a good match, but he just got worn down. I mean, he was Harold was
I'll
sitting
tell you a quick one. A good one on Harold is I'm in Washington. He's playing Arthur Ashe on the stadium court, and I had a player's pass, so I got my This was when you had Nikon cameras instead of the stuff today. So I'm there next. Arthur's meditating in between games. He got annoyed with me because I took a picture of him. But anyway, Arthur was great at the time. Anyway, Arthur's got match point on Harold. I'll never forget it. And he serves a big serve to Harold. Harold steps in and hits a forehand down the line, 80 miles an hour for a winner, and Harold ends up beating him.
Wow.
So fast forward, we're playing golf, and he's got a 10-foot putt for $20 or whatever, and he misses it. And I said, Harold, I don't understand. I said, I see you, taking Arthur's serve in front of 10,000 people, no problem. And here you got a 10-foot putt, and you get nervous and miss it. and he agreed. He said it's because I had confidence in on the tennis court, and he said I don't have the confidence. As great a competitor as he is, as you know, Gary, Dick, when you're confident, your nerves are not as upfront and personal as when you're confident. And that was a very interesting thing that Harold told me. I'll never forget it because I mean he was incredible. He really. The shame for Harold is he's only 5'6".
Yeah.
No
I mean,
question.
how do you come to the net when you're 5'6"?
Yeah.
Hey, plus he went to Dick Stockton's wife's charity event, and when it was time to reel out the dollars to buy some tickets, he had a roll of like $5,000 right on, right out of his pocket.
That's nice.
Yeah.
No, he's fair. He's the charity. He used to do the
charitable
project stuff. He did that every year.
Well, it's incredible to hear about, when he was, after the Munich Olympics and stuff. I mean, how serious that was with the Jewish thing, with the Davis Cup in Romania.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's where I remember that with Tyriak and Nastasia.
Yeah. So I'm showing this again. So this Tennis Life book that we see on here, what do you think? Amazon?
There you go.
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon, and it's I'm not famous, unfortunately, but
no,
I think
you're not.
As you know, Gary, from these people that are in there, Taylor Dent's in there. These are all people, and again, Gary, you should have been in the book that I knew throughout my life, and I wanted to reach back out to these people after all these years. And I had a series of questions that I pretty much asked everybody, including, what's your favorite win? What's your best loss? Your worst loss?
Right.
Any regrets? Blah, blah, blah. And very interesting. Good old Taylor Dent, who's a great guy. And I asked him, and he said his only regret is he said I hit way too many slice backhands in my life. That's what he said.
Because you're,
as a lot to that statement.
Because you're not being positive when you hit a slice backhand under pressure. It's a weak shot.
And he grew up, but Gary, when he grew up with that, there really, Sampras had some topspin, but there weren't that many one-handed topspin players. I mean, Taylor was a great serve and volleyer, and Taylor did beat Djokovic first time he ever played him. Very interesting.
Yeah, but that was a different Djokovic and different time. I mean, he couldn't even serve. He couldn't even serve back then. But what? No,
you're right about that, Gary. You're right.
Yeah, but what the key is that now it's just a totally different game, and a slice is defensive, and I remember that if you rolled your backhand, you could hit winners off or tough shots off the return. You could play. If you're just going to slice it back and let a guy come in when the courts were fast, like when we had them, you got no chance. But anyway, that's an interesting statement. But I'd like to see more people go on Amazon and buy this book, Tennis Life, Ward Snyder. And
thanks, Gary. I wish they would. It's very interesting.
SNYDER, just like the man I eulogized a month ago, Dave Snyder, the tennis coach at Texas, same last name. And boy, there's some great stories in here. And you signed a book for me, and so many of the guys that I played tennis against, and interesting stories about them, and the interaction that you had with not only with Harold early on.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great read. I enjoyed reading it.
Did you read it?
Like I said, I've read all but the last 4 people, but on every story, I like, for the people that I really didn't know, I became much more appreciative of his whole point, is that there are a lot of great players out there that were never known or maybe
that's
appreciated.
Part of the theme is that you're right.
Yeah.
Unless you're, with tennis, unless you're the top few guys, and you guys know, Trey Waldke, as great as Trey was, he was only ranked as high as maybe 45 in the world.
Is that right?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think. But not many
Yeah, but he beat Borg, he beat Connors, he beat McEnroe, he beat them all. Yeah.
That shows you how great he was.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think that this book speaks to is the fact that the tennis community as a whole is kind of a close-knit group. I mean, if you know Gary Plock and you know Ward Snyder, then you probably know 3/4 of the tennis players that are out there, and you know them pretty well.
We know a lot. It is a great community.
Yeah, you grow up going to all these tournaments, and a lot of the big tournaments, you see, who's in front of you, who's behind you. You see the women, you see the men, and you get to know these people, even if it's just a name on a draw sheet. You know who they are, and then you sort of kind of have this bond, even though you may have never played each other or even been in the same division, but maybe you were in the same era, so you have something in common with them in terms of, I played in that tournament, who did you play, and all that kind of stuff, which lends into this book that you wrote, which is great.
Yeah, I think I have the draw sheet of the 1200 Nationals. Was it Annapolis, Maryland, where you're from? Because it always
Silver Spring.
Yeah.
So listen, I got to tell you a quick funny one. So last year I decided to play a tournament, right? So I'm playing a tournament in Anderson. I'm not seeded. The guy who's top seed is big, tall German. I'm playing in the 16 over. I'm 68. But
doesn't know you from the Man in the Moon, obviously.
Yeah. So guess what? So he doesn't even say hello to me. I have no record. I haven't played any tournaments in a few years. And the guy was a good player.
Yeah.
He just won the Southern Indoors in Asheville. He beat like 4 or 5 players. So he's a player.
Yeah.
So long story short, he kind of poked the bear with me. He wasn't respecting me. He wasn't very nice. And got
Don't
me
mess
kind of
with
fired
Ward.
up, right?
Yeah.
So I win the first set 6-4. He's up 3-love second. I come back. Long story short, it's 4-3 him. My serve, I'm down love 40. I'm probably going to lose the match.
Yeah.
Seriously. I had 2 long points. It was hot out there. At 30-40, I hit an underhand serve for an ace. And I ended up winning the game at 5-4. Long story short, he tries to hit an underhand serve to me. He's a big lefty. So he's a big lefty. And me hits the serve on the deuce court, a lefty spin serve. I reach for it. I hit a forehand down the line, and I'm at the net. It's a big forehand ripper. I lunge for it, hit a Gary Plock, Dick Milford volley for a winner. and he hits on match point. He hits 2 underhand serves at the bottom of the net and barely shook my hand.
Oh my God!
You choked him out.
So the rankings come out in South Carolina in the 16 over. I'm only ranked 9. He's ranked number 1. Because I didn't play any tournaments, but so I'm playing the Southern Indoors next month, and I'm going to see if I can see. But it's funny, look, we all are competitors, and we all can play. We've played enough. It's kind of fun. I still enjoy it a little bit more than maybe others.
It's
not
better.
Easy on the body, as you know.
It's not easy on the body, but it's better when you do it later. When you do it later, and nobody knows who you are. Well, will you do one thing before we cut off of here? Can you tell my friend Scott Irwin to lose a little weight? See ya.
Anyway, hey, good talking to you guys.
Thanks, Ward. Talk to you later.
Okay, great podcast. Y'all take care. God bless.
All right, take care. God bless you, Ward. Take care.
How do we turn this thing off, Richard? That damn Ward Snyder.
He's a blast.
Well, I don't know if this stuff will even get on the internet, but if it
Studio,
does,
is that part of YouTube?
Yeah, it's just a
YouTube feature?
YouTube. Yeah.
That was pretty sweet. I
Was it?
enjoyed
Did you like that?
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
know nothing about it.
Richard was smooth.
That's what.
Hey, that food's there. I don't think the potatoes are really done, but you might need to stick them in the microwave. But the rest of it's good.
Delicious.
Oh, did you have? Did it taste all right?
Everything was good.
Well, we may be. I can't end stream this thing. We may still be recording. That was a 40-minute thing.
Yeah.
But it's still going. Wait a second.
You guys
I can't turn it. You got to figure out how to turn it off.
Turn it off would be good.
Yeah. So y'all like that movie today?
Oh, it was really good. You know, anybody who's athletic or a competitor will appreciate it and enjoy it.